If you've ever thought to yourself, at this big age, I should be fill in the blank of whatever accomplishment or whatever thing you feel like you should know how to do or how to think about, this video is for you. Because I think when we say that to ourselves, if someone tells us that, that sounds like maybe motivating, but it's actually slowing down our growth if we're telling ourselves this, or it's kind of a form of shame if someone else is telling us this, right? It's like, oh, why don't you know this by now at this age? And by the end of this video, you understand why that phrase works against you. And you also know how to reframe your timeline without letting yourself off the hook. And basically, I grew up with the phrase at your big age. I am African, specifically Ghanaian. And, I don't even know when it started. It actually started quite young. They were like, oh, at your big age, you should know XYZ. And, I've moved past that and like I kind of use it jokingly sometimes, but ultimately, the phrase is meant as a finger wag. It assumes that everyone has the same upbringing. It assumes that somehow, some way you should know this, and it's a shame that you don't know it. It assumes that everyone had emotional safety to learn and to grow. It also assumes that everyone had time to reflect, and that's not always the case. At least it's not the case for me. It turns what should be growth, what should be just human development, into a moral failing instead of a process. So I want to talk about that because just because something is cultural doesn't mean it's correct. And that impact has long-term effects on the way that we think, the way that we grow, and what we allow ourselves to learn and to make mistakes, right? So in a minute, I'm going to explain why most people don't even start real self-awareness until later than they think. And it's really has a lot to do with margins in your life. So I'm 30. And when I reference my childhood, I like feel like the internal eye roll. I'm like, oh my gosh, Afua, like at your big age, why are you still referencing the trauma of your childhood? And it's something that lately has been coming up a lot for me, and I've been feeling really bad about, like, oh my gosh, get over it. Like, not everything should be about your childhood, et cetera, et cetera. But there's this book by Oprah and Dr. Bruce Perry that it says like what happened to you. And pretty much at the beginning of it, Oprah is like, through all her years and all her interviews, what she's learned is that if something is wrong, it's from your childhood, right? And we laugh at it, but it is true. But also at some point, you can't make that your crutch. So that's how I've been feeling lately. And it dawned on me earlier this morning that like if I did the math, like let me break down the math for you, right? My childhood personally didn't end at 18 because even though, yes, I did go to college, I spent 5 years in college because I did my undergrad and my master's. When I finished, I moved back. So let's say I was what? I don't know, 22 or something when I moved back home. And I lived home for 2 years. So I can pay off my student debt and do other things. So I was under my parents-ish kind of sort of until 22, right? Let's just say that. So right now, if we're just doing the math, if I'm 30 and um I didn't leave my parents' umbrella until I was 22. That's just 8 years, but So just keeping that in mind. And then also keeping that in my early 20s, my whole focus was not about being reflective. It was surviving. It was still reactive. It was like, let me pay off my debt. Let me figure out corporate America. Let me, set my future upright. It was trying to really understand how to be an adult in this world as a black woman from a low income family, as a black woman who is also has immigrant backgrounds, right? Trying to figure it out in America. There was no space in my life for sitting down and reflecting. It was what do I need to do today to survive, but also as much as I can, what can I do to set myself up for the future? So I'm realizing that it wasn't that I was avoiding growth. I was again surviving. So it's only the last few years that I've had the space to ask, why do I move like this? Why do I think like this? Why do these things trigger me? And do I like who I am? Do I like who I am in these situations? Do I like how I respond? Am I responding? Am I reacting? Right? All these different questions are coming up for me at this age. And the more I dig into it, the more I think about my reactions, the more I think about why I process the way I do, and why I have, quite frankly, even set up my life the way I've set up. Why was I so pressed about paying off my debt? Why was I so pressed about purchasing a home? Why was I so pressed about being ridiculously competent at work, right? Why were all these things so important to me? And what I'm also realizing by asking these questions is that this awareness, this questioning isn't late, right? So the whole idea of at this big age is a bit of a false narrative, because it's not, oh, at this big age, why are you still asking these questions, or why are you just asking these questions? Is at this age, at this position in my life, I am now experiencing safety. I'm now experiencing emotional safety within myself, within my environment, to ask these questions and not be shut down or ridiculed. I'm facing safety in the home that I have, in my partner, in my financial security, in my food safety, right? And now that I have all these, and I'm like, okay, I feel pretty secure that I have a roof over my head. I feel pretty secure that I have food to eat. I can now ask myself these questions. And also, quite frankly, the environment around me. I'm also in a space where if I'm asking questions, I know I'm not going to be berated, insulted, etc., or whatever emotional stuff I dealt with in my childhood. And this is why I had to come to the realization that I need to stop beating myself up about saying this is from my childhood, because my childhood did have a huge impact on the way I communicate and I interact. And if I tell myself, well, at your big age, why are you asking this? I'm simply perpetuating um, the challenges that my childhood brought in. And my goal right now is to break it, right? Because the thing that no one says is that you can't heal from something that you're still inside, right? Because if I'm still inside this mindset of like, oh, how I should be acting, or I just mentioned all the safety that I feel if I'm um, trying to manage bills, family expectations, corporate nonsense, and identity shifts. Reflection is truly a luxury, and one that I could not afford at that moment in my life. The only reflection I could afford was like, how do I make sure my boss is happy with me so I can keep my job, so I don't get laid off, so I get the promotion, so I get the raise, right? How do I navigate, especially if you live in a big city? I'm from New York City. How do I navigate paying, what is it, 2 or 3 times the rent, or like your income had to show 2 or 3 times the rent in order to secure a decent place to live, right? That is what I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about these questions. So shaming myself when I finally had the safety doesn't actually help me get where I want to go. And it won't help you either, because what is the point of shaming ourselves for where we are today? Yes, at this big age, yeah, I'm going to reference a few things that happened in my life, because that is where I'm coming from. And if I don't acknowledge it, I can't move on. Because we praise survival and then mock people for unpacking it later, right? So everyone is happy when I announce the promotion, the house, the this, the that. But if I start sitting down and reflecting, then it's like, oh girl, come on, get over it. No, don't get over it. Sit with it. Sit with it. Sit with it. Right. And I've said this earlier, so I just want to kind of just state this clearly. I'm not saying that you need to live here forever, because context is not a permanent residence. Okay. A year from now, this shouldn't be the whole story. I still shouldn't be talking about, oh well, my childhood, because at this point, for a few years, I've kind of been unpacking, and I have a clarity. So yes, I might reference childhood stuff, but it should not be with the same amount of like angst or oh my goshness or stuckness. I should not be repeating the same story. And I made a video a few days ago about this, your story and your gap. And what I was referencing in there is that if something is going on in your life, and everything that goes wrong in your life, you're always referencing the same thing. So let's say for some reason, like there's a leak in my house. And my first thought to myself is like, oh my gosh, my life has always been so hard because my childhood was so hard. I don't know how to select a good house and fix a leak, or I don't know how to communicate with a blah, blah, blah. And then let's say my boss doesn't accept a proposal I made, and I blame it on my childhood, I blame it on my parents, my friendships, I blame it on, like, if every solution or reason to your problems is the same thing, then that is a story, and that means you're stuck. But if you look at the through line and say, hey, maybe I keep referencing my childhood for all these things, and they all have to do around communication. So you change that story of, oh, my childhood was so bad, and then you move it to, hey, I have a gap in communication. And then you fix that communication skill. So I say that to say, a year from today, the things that I'm noticing and I'm realizing about my childhood and some of the things that I don't love about my current life today, I should have moved forward in a year from now. So I should not be singing the same story a year from now. I should have identified the gaps and work on closing those gaps. And if you want to watch the video, I think it's literally called Story Gap or something like that. So go check it out. So I don't think you can get clarity by skipping compassion for yourself. I think you need that compassion, you need that empathy. And that allows you to then be secure in what needs to come next. Understanding why it's not the same thing as excusing everything. Understanding why allows you to see the gap and the skill that you need to heal and to learn. And this is where people usually mess up. So stay with me. I see this pattern constantly with smart, capable adults. And when I work with my clients, what is coming up is career pivots, money habits, emotional boundaries. And there's this invisible thing where people are like, well, I should know this by now. I should know how to communicate with my friends by now. I should know how to make friendships by now. I should have a better romantic relationship by now. I should be able to walk in a room at work and just own it by now. At my big age, I might, and it's like, no, there's no invisible deadline. There's no age that said, oh, when you're 11, no matter what was happening in your life, you should have downloaded this thing. Why would that even be? Why? No, take that burden off yourself. Remove it from yourself. I'm giving you permission. I don't, who am I? But I'm giving you permission to give yourself, to unburden yourself from that. Because the thing is that the fact that the minute you say at this big age, I want you to kind of take a step back and then ask, like, okay, well, what is actually missing here? What question can I ask about this? If at this big age I should be able to stand up to my parents, then maybe the question is like, where could I have learned boundaries, or how did I learn not to put up boundaries? And now how can I build that skill of creating boundaries around my time, my energy, my whatever? Because growth cannot happen on a schedule. There's intention, there's emotional safety, environmental safety. It happens when friction eases. So once you start noticing things, that probably means that you've actually done quite a lot of really great things in your life to give yourself that safety and to reduce some of that friction, which is now allowing you to notice these things. Because if you're in survivor mode, bro, that survivor mode is getting you through. It's not allowing you to think, oh, no. You're surviving. But the minute you start being able to notice things that don't sit well in your body, you've done a lot of things right. So first of all, like, shout out to you. I just want to say that. And then once you acknowledge that, then we can move on. And this is why I care so much about how we talk about timelines. A lot of my work is helping people clean up their story without deleting their past. Because you don't need a new personality. You don't need a narrative that that keeps shaming you. What you need is a narrative that lets you move forward. So if this video feels a little too accurate, you're probably really who I work with. So I just want you to explore that. If you're in the phase where awareness just turned on, you're not behind. Please don't shame yourself, or don't allow anyone else to shame you with at this big age. Yeah, at this big age, look at all the stuff I've accomplished, and I'll give myself safety to ask these questions. Shout out to me. Shout out to you. Because as much as people like to throw that phrase around, not a lot of people actually explore that more. Not a lot of people explore, wait, why don't I know these things? Do I care to know these things? And if so, how do I move forward? How do I enable myself to embrace who I am, allow my past, my experiences to shape the colorfulness, the tapestry of my life and not limit me? So, anyways, thank you for watching. Again, if this video feels a little too accurate, you're probably who I work best with. So please reach out. Also, if this video resonated, please subscribe. I post daily so we can unpack these things and live our best lives. See you tomorrow.